It's depressing if you're a Browns fan.
I
mean,
yes,
no doubt.
I'd say.
Any fan that said anything is bullshit. That's simple. You don't do that.
But I am very upset with the reaction to a man that has had the world against him for the past 4 years, and he put his body and life on the line for this city.
Man does pretty much everything right. He's been a model citizen.
When I hear Myles Garrett and Jameis Winston call for empathy for Deshaun Watson, that's cringe.
Do you believe that Deshaun Watson has played his last down for the Cleveland Browns?
yes.
Riz, I think there are a lot of things Stefanski is being forced to do that if he could do it his way, things would be a little bit different.
Well, then how about you do it your way?
Yesterday was as poorly coached and poorly planned as I've ever seen in 4 years and now 7 games with Kevin Stefanski.
As much as I'd love to sit here and talk about the great things I think Stefanski has done, as much as I'd like to talk about some of the really good things that Andrew Berry has done, it's going to be hard for them to save their jobs.
How about you stand up and go, I'm going to start coaching this team my way? Because, Kev, I got news for you, man. As much as they love you and you do what they say, you keep losing, you're not going to be around.
After last game, there are a ton of questions about the Cleveland Browns as a team, as an organization for this year and beyond. But the biggest questions are these 3 right here. Can Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski survive this season? Do you roll with DTR or Jameis Winston going forward? And what are the actual long-term effects for this team, for this city, the organization, with fans cheering for Deshaun Watson's injury? Well, let's start with that last question first. If you're one of our growing number of Patreon supporters, you know that my prediction for this game was essentially right on the nose. I said they'd go back to heavy under center, they would roll the pocket, run bootlegs, play action, that sort of style of play that has worked in the past, and what was essentially the exact recipe for them beating the Bengals in week 1 last season. Like I said, they wanted to roll the pocket, have tight ends and H-backs slicing to the flats for easy completions that he could flow with outside of the pocket. And they did that, and they did it pretty effectively early on. Yes, Deshaun Watson missed open shots early on in this game. There was a deep crosser to Jerry Jeudy that would have been an electric start to this game and would have had the Bengals on their heels right away. But even still, with missing those shots downfield, there was some momentum being gained with this style of play for Watson. Under center, play action, it just worked out better for him. And those early completions were helping to sustain drives to some degree. Of course, there were the usual suspects who stymied the progress Watson was making and made it difficult for him to feel comfortable hanging in the pocket. Look no further than Jedrick Wills. He will be getting a full video at some point this season. But even still, by the time of his final drive, he was starting to get into a groove, and he got to 15 for 17 for 128 yards. It was leading up to be a very respectable performance, and maybe getting back into that style, that philosophy of offense was going to see him start to come into his own a little bit more, and was giving a glimmer of kind of what he was getting onto last year by the time he peaked in the Ravens game but ultimately got injured. However, they call a design quarterback run. The Achilles snaps, and if you were watching the broadcast, you knew it immediately, and then madness ensued. If you watched the Sunday night live stream after Sunday Night Football, which we do every single week on this channel, you know what my position was on this. But if you weren't there, here's the crux of what I said. I understand the fans' inclination to want to cheer with him going down, with how awfully mismanaged this whole situation has been, from the organization, with the off-field stuff, and then most importantly, with his level of play. I also completely understand the players being angry with the fans for cheering. However, both the players and the fans who were right for their initial feelings were wrong in their reasoning. The fans who were claiming that they cheered because he's a bad guy are lying. If Watson was the Houston version who they traded for and who they thought they were getting, and he was playing great, they would have been devastated to see him go down. And this is where I'm getting at with this. Every single day, people listen to music from artists who are horrible people. They watch movies from producers, directors, and actors who have done complete heinous acts. People in every industry work with people who act contrary to their own personal morals and beliefs. And they vote for people who are essentially criminals who lie and steal and don't deliver on their promises, and then commit war crimes in the highest ranks of office across the world. What bothers me about this situation is that people can't be agnostic about it. Stop trying to frame yourself as a good, ethical person. You weren't out there protesting the signing or the trade, and you would have been accepting of him and his flaws if he was a great player still. The point that I'm trying to make is that if you love someone's music, if their political policies serve your best interests, and if their movies entertain you, you will cast away your moral concessions that you have about that person and the things that they've done, and you will sit back and consume and enjoy. Of course, this is not a blanket statement, but it is applicable to about 95% of the people who are being most vocal about this. If you are one of those people who was against it from the beginning and you upheld your moral principles and you act that way in every other part of your life, then kudos to you. You're a good person. You earned it. But I don't think that that is how, like I said, 95% of the people who are being vocal about this online have acted and conduct themselves in their personal lives every single day. And I thought that Chris Canty perfectly described what I'm trying to say here Monday following the game.
When I hear Myles Garrett and Jameis Winston call for empathy for Deshaun Watson, that's cringe. And I understand wanting to defend your teammate. I understand that bunker mentality. You know, I'm in the foxhole with my guy, and I got to defend my guy. There was nothing wrong with those players coming out and saying it lacks class for the Cleveland Browns fans to boo when Deshaun Watson got hurt. Period, end sentence. Leave it there.
On the side of the players, I totally understand them being upset with fans cheering on their teammate who's just going through a devastating moment physically, emotionally, and mentally relative to the game that is being played on the field. But you can't go so far to make Deshaun Watson the victim. It's not going to work. There's too many receipts, lawsuits, and who knows what else to be cashed in. With all this being said, I'm not trying to pose myself as someone who's morally more sound. I frame this from the beginning in a way that it is based on performance. My criticisms, my praise of Watson, it is purely performance based. I didn't have the power to make this decision. No one did. And I sure as hell wasn't out there protesting it. All of that to say, I'm not going to sit here and act like a white knight like a lot of people have across the content creation sphere around the sports world and try to cash in some unearned moral superiority by making a stand once he doesn't have any chance of being the starting quarterback anymore. But back to the question, what are the long-term effects of the fans cheering for a player who was injured in their home stadium? There were a ton of people saying that this is going to affect the team long-term, that free agents, that potential draft prospects aren't going to want to come to Cleveland, that even some players might start requesting trades. Initially, I was kind of on that wavelength Sunday night because it was such a heavy thing. But after I've had some time to sit on it for a couple days, I really don't think that this is going to have any effect on any of those things, because you can erase all of this if you just start playing good football. That is what matters at the end of the day. Like I said, winning heals all wounds, and that will make everyone forget about what happened on Sunday. Players aren't going to ask for trades, free agents aren't going to turn down money, and draft picks aren't going to deny Cleveland because fans cheered, somewhat justifiably, for a fundamentally flawed player getting injured. However, they will ask for trades, they will turn down money, and they will deny Cleveland from drafting them if they continue to play as ineptly as they have. That is the bigger issue here. And it is the biggest issue facing this current regime, this roster, and the organization going forward. When it comes to Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, it is over. He will never play for the Browns again. He might never play in the NFL again. Everyone has to accept that this was a bad move and try to move on. But who will have to pay for making the decision to bring him to Cleveland in the first place? The whole situation with Watson has been a mess from the beginning. But the bigger issue, and the most serious one, in the immediate, is the way that this team has performed. This is where we now have to ask and try to answer, how does Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski survive this? The difference with Stefanski, though, is that he has led woefully undisciplined teams every single year in his career with the Browns. We went through this on the live stream. How many penalties every season the Browns have had. They are leading the league right now. They were third in the league last season. He just cannot seem to prevent his team from making the same mental mistakes every single week. There's no emphasis on being detail oriented. There's a lack of fight in the trenches. There's a lack of production in the run game. And overall, I just do not feel like this team is very tough. I feel like that is a reflection of his style as a coach and his general aura as a leader within that locker room. There's a great excerpt from The Score Takes Care of Itself. It's by Bill Walsh, and he gives an example of Barry Switzer, who took over for Jimmy Johnson's completely dominant 90s Cowboys teams. His organizational abilities and attention to detail, painstaking attention to perfecting small but important issues, were relatively laid back. This last item is important because if the person in charge is casual in these areas, others will follow suit. And look, Barry Switzer won a Super Bowl as the Cowboys head coach, but eventually that eroded because the standard of performance, the details were not important to him. He was too laid back in his approach. Ultimately, the Cowboys, even though they had a ton of talent, became a terribly undisciplined and unfocused team. I think in a lot of ways, that describes Kevin Stefanski. You can't completely blame the players for jumping off sides, for false starts, for illegal shifts, all of those things that happen every single game, because the head coach is the one who sets the standard of performance and the one who lays out discipline for when those players aren't upholding that standard. I just don't think the players fear what Stefanski can do to them in any way. And that doesn't mean that he has to be a guy who screams or yells. Bill Walsh wasn't a screamer. But it does mean that there have to be consequences for guys who drop the ball, who illegally shift, who false start, who hold, for receivers who take plays off, blocking downfield. Stefanski is undeniably too laid back in those areas. Because if he weren't, then these things wouldn't be happening. The issue is that you have to draw the line in the sand early as to what is acceptable and what is not. And he did not do that early on. I'm not sure if you can get that genie back in the bottle, but that is the challenge that Stefanski's going to have to overcome if he wants to be the Browns head coach next season. Stefanski cannot bank on tanking and retooling with a top pick next year. He has to win games. He has to be competitive and lead a disciplined team who plays effort-filled, detail-oriented football. And that is what will drive every decision going forward this season. So with that being said, who's this team's quarterback moving forward? Brief interruption here. This is coming from our sponsor, and we actually don't do sponsors, but we are plugging theoptimisticfanclub.com. My people, we have stickers galore. We had the poster pre-sale that is now over, unfortunately, but we will be doing a giveaway shortly. And we have a new poster that we're putting up for sale. The pre-sale ends November 3rd, I believe. All the information is on the website, but you can do that. Guys, this is the only way that we are trying to support the channel. We want to do this completely grassroots. Some people do super chats during the live streams. Save your money, buy some stickers, buy some posters, join the Patreon. That is the best way to support it, and you're getting something in return. So we thank you guys so much for your support. Consider supporting the channel. It's the only way we're making money here, because with the music and everything that we do, it demonetizes every video. So we appreciate your support. Let's get back to the video though. DTR showed some really good moments in this game. As soon as he stepped in, you felt an energy shift. His first throw was a shot down the sidelines to Cedric Tillman. If Tillman extends his arms and doesn't try to catch us on his body, it's probably a touchdown, but it drew a pass interference and gets the ball to the 1 yard line. That kind of confidence in just going out there to make plays and give your receivers a chance is something that this team has sorely been missing with Watson. And regardless of the outcome, even with not completing the pass, you get the pass interference and it sets up your boy Nick Chubb, our guy, for his first touchdown in 399 days, whatever it was. Then on the next drive, DTR's running ability shines. Serious speed, serious playmaking ability on full display right there. That right there is another huge boost, a huge energy boost to your team, a confidence builder for your defense watching on the sideline. But wouldn't you know it, right there, the same things that plagued Watson anytime he had positive momentum happen again with DTR. They get pre-snap penalties, false starts, whatever it was, stops them from making progress on that drive. And just to give a general synopsis on DTR, the kid is electric, but he is erratic. He tries to do things that puts himself in harm's way, similar to the way that Baker was in a lot of the senses, trying to hurdle a guy as he's going out of bounds, getting thrown around. And he missed some open throws that he absolutely has to make. There's the 4th and 1, misses Nick Chubb in the flats for what would have been a clear, easy 4th down conversion. There's some other open throws that he missed. And for the people creating the straw man arguments of saying, oh, you think DTR was any better, the Watson Warriors and whatnot, it's not the same thing. This kid's coming off the bench and he started 2 games in his career. It's like you can't try and indict a guy because of how he performs coming off of the bench. It is clear he gave the team a spark. Yes, he misses open throws, but he's in his 2nd year. If you were willing to give Watson 7 weeks and hoping that he was going to turn it around, you should be willing to park your concessions and your preconceived notions and say, okay, maybe if he got a full week to start and he started the game, maybe he looks a little bit better. However, he has to be better. He has to make better decisions. He has to stop running around like he did against Denver, trying to buy time, trying to make too many plays. Is that something that he can overcome? Maybe. Is it something that's completely baked into him and he'll never shake? Maybe that's true too. But there is a big part of me that would like to see him get a full week to see what he's like. Can he hit the layups? Can he make the routine plays to go along with the spectacular ones that he does seem to make? But honestly, after the 2nd interception, him hurting his finger was probably something that made Stefanski happy deep down. Why? It put the ball into the hands of Jameis Winston. Going from Watson to DTR, you felt an energy boost, you felt a spark. Going from DTR to Jameis, though, you felt that the ball got handed off to a guy who was a calming presence, who was going to make the right decisions, and who was going to take control and lead this offense. You could see him communicating at the line. He's getting guys set. He's getting the protection set. He's commanding the offense. And boy, he put together a very nice, competent drive. This wasn't a garbage time drive either. Cincinnati's trying to stop them from making this a 1-score game late in the game. When he dropped back, you could tell he's calm, he's confident, he was working through his progressions, and he was delivering catchable balls to the right man on almost every progression. Jerry Jeudy dropped 2 really, really nice balls from Jameis Winston. One was perfectly thrown low to protect him coming across the middle of the field. The other one basically just hit him in the numbers and he didn't complete it. But in general, you saw a glimpse on this one drive of what this offense can be capable of, even without an Amari Cooper, even without a great run game in that instance. What this team has needed is just a guy to make the right choices. And he capped it off with a fantastic throw to David Njoku at the back of the end zone. At first, when he released this ball, I'm like, he's just throwing it out of the back of the end zone. He's getting rid of it. They're going up, retooling for another down. However, it was perfectly placed, working with his players' strengths, putting that ball up and high. David Njoku makes a great catch, gets the feet inbounds, touchdown. Then you go for the 2-point convert, calmly rolling, finds Cedric Tillman. And then just like that, it was a 7-point game. It was the most promising single drive from a quarterback this year. And like I mentioned, Stefanski does not have the courtesy of tanking and resetting for 2025. The only way he is back is if the Browns can show that they can play good, focused, disciplined, and competent football. After looking at our options, I think that I think that Kevin Stefanski sees that best option for winning now, for getting this team back on track, is with Jameis Winston. So to me, I think he is the guy until this team hits 8-9 losses. At that point, when the writing's on the wall in terms of what the future plans are, then sure, yeah, they'll make him evaluate DTR. But while he's trying to win, it's Jameis Winston. There are no excuses, no more players to hide behind. This is now on Kevin Stefanski to show that he can be a great head coach, that he can be the head coach for the future of this team. And this is Stefanski's biggest battle yet, because it's not just about having a good team and making one player, i.e. the quarterback, be able to step in and manage that game. Because outside of the defense, this team is playing very poorly. The special teams are terrible. Dustin Hopkins, I don't know what happened to that guy. Hopefully he can get back on the mend. But you essentially lost this game. Yes, the offense is one thing, but largely because of special teams. The opening kickoff getting returned for a touchdown by a young, fast, dynamic player. Meanwhile, the Browns have Deontay Foreman, an oversized, slower running back, returning kicks for them. And to open up the second half, completely misreads it, gets his team set up at the 10-yard line. How does that happen? You can't just pass that off and be like, oh, well, it's Bubba Ventrone's decision. You are the head coach. You need to be having a hand in every aspect of this team because you are the head coach. You are not just an offensive coordinator. I could keep going on this, but I'll finish with this. Stefanski is the next guy to go, and only he can get these guys ready to play a better standard of football. This is something we are going to continue monitoring. If it gets to the point where we're talking about future candidates, this, that, and the other, that will be on Patreon. So make sure you join. You can join for free, get updated when new stuff drops, and you can consider supporting the page through that. But all that to say, it's going to be a busy back half of this season. However, let's finish on a positive note because there were, again, some positives to be found. There are some guys on this roster who are continually improving and who I look at and say, that is someone I want a part of this next phase because they are tough, because they are focused, because they do the little things right on the field. And you'll know why I'm putting that caveat in there because of some of this player's off-field issues. But Mike Hall Jr. had a very solid game. He adds a new dimension to the pass rush, and he is just tough. It is what I love in a player, someone who punishes. When they try to run block against him, he clogs up run lanes and punishes the guy who's trying to block him. He showed a high motor on all of his reps, and if he can stay on track off the field, that is a guy who you can win with. That is a guy who you can build a defense around. Then there are other guys who go completely unnoticed. But Winston Reed is a demon on special teams. His effort and his mentality, his punishing mentality has been so undeniable that they now have him in on short yardage to be a lead blocker or a kick-out blocker. And he makes guys pay. That is the kind of effort that you applaud and reward with more playing time, regardless of where he's going to get on the field to contribute. He makes an impact on game day in the little ways and brings a toughness that this team, I think, is severely lacking. Finally, Cedric Tillman, who I previously mentioned, and he had his best game as a pro, minus the one play where he throttles down in the zone in front of the over-the-ball route. He should have continued clearing out. It's kind of what caused the interception. Other than that play, I thought he played really, really well. Not only can he box out guys in the passing game, he's a hands catcher for the most part, and he can fight for extra yards, but he is an undeniably really, really good run blocker. He is not taking plays off. They integrate him in ways within the box to block in the run game. He is someone who goes out there and he's trying to be a complete player. That is the kind of effort that you reward. You reward receivers who block really, really well. And that was something with Amari Cooper. I always watched. He had bad body language in a lot of ways. He just wanted to catch the ball. He wasn't really a dog in the run blocking game. But Cedric Tillman, again, that is the kind of guy who you have in there, who you give playing time because they do the little things right. If he can work on his release, if he can learn to be a bit more dynamic as a route runner, he could be a very special player. But in general, I like those guys who show the effort every single snap, and they do it in the small areas. I want to finish this video off with one more quote from the Bill Walsh book that I mentioned. This is the book right here. You should definitely buy it. It's a fantastic read, but it's really a piece that talks about how this team needs to go forward and how they build their roster and build their depth chart every single week. And this is one of Walsh's former understudies speaking about Walsh as a coach here. Bill understood that at one end of the scale, there were locker room leaders who were positive and supportive, and at the other end, influential players who were very negative. Most important, he understood that all the guys in the middle could go one way or the other. They were up for grabs. He began addressing the issue immediately when he arrived through simple math, addition and subtraction, retaining and adding talented personnel who were ready and willing to get on board with his program, subtracting, i.e. firing, those who were negative. Bill was smart enough, strong-willed enough to get rid of talented people if they were contributors to a negative organizational culture. aka not team players. He understood the power of the culture, the mindset of people in an organization, and recognized that changing the San Francisco 49er culture was paramount because it was so toxic. There are guys on this team like Jedrick Wills who have talent without a doubt, but their attitude, attention to detail, body language, and effort is so poor that it has a ripple effect across the board. It has an immediate physical one when the quarterback's getting rocked and he just stands there and shrugs his shoulders, but it affects the people on the line next to him as well. If you're his backup, if you're another player, if you're an opposing player on defense who goes against him in practice and you see that, that has to kill your motivation as to what you think is possible in terms of winning when you say, that's the guy we're starting at left tackle. This is something that this organization has to keep in mind weekly if they want a chance to turn this thing around this season. And I don't mean that in making the playoffs. This team is not making the playoffs, but in terms of setting them up for success next year without making a complete regime change. Amplify the people and voices who do the things that you say are the standard and cut the anchors who are pulling your team down into the depths of obscurity. This is going to be a crazy second half of the season. It's going to be really fun to watch, regardless of what happens, regardless of how many losses there are. So be sure to subscribe, join the Patreon, and join us on Sunday night after Sunday Night Football, because we do our live stream every week, and that thing is elite. Thank you guys for watching. We will see you in the next one. Later.